She was clearly working class. She had higher scores, better grades than the black student that beat her out. The black student that the admissions committee favored was someone that had the right pedigree. And that means that that was someone that came from a solid, middle class, more affluent background. The world is my classroom. You are welcome to pull up a chair. Hi, I'm Carol Swain. Welcome to my classroom. Today we're going to talk about affirmative action in higher education. The Supreme Court's decision to strike down race-based college admissions. Race-based college admissions have been around since the late 1960s. It's been with us for a long time. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that race-based college admissions violated the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution. The two institutions involved, one was Harvard University, a private school. The other one was the University of North Carolina, a public school. Now that the Supreme Court has struck down race-based affirmative action, the left is up in arms. And there are people that may be genuinely concerned that this is going to mean that colleges and universities will not have blacks and Hispanics and other groups because these groups will not be able to meet the high standards of the academic institutions. So they become lily white. Is that true? I don't think so. So what's going to happen now that colleges and universities cannot make race-based decisions when they admit students? The decision to strike down race-based affirmative action at elite institutions will not have the dramatic impact that some people have argued. And I say this based on my observations as a university professor over the years, the things that I have observed. For one thing, affirmative action never operated the way that many people thought it did. And I was a university professor for 28 years in admissions decisions where it didn't work the way you thought affirmative action would have worked. I remember one case in particular that involved an applicant to an elite institution. This applicant was the child of a housekeeper, and her father had a blue-collar job, so she was clearly working class. She had higher scores, better grades than the black student that beat her out. The black student that the admissions committee favored was someone that had the right pedigree, and that means that that was someone that came from a solid, middle-class, more affluent background. And at many of the elite institutions, you will find some children from working-class backgrounds, but disproportionately, you will find minorities there who are the offspring of lawyers, doctors, judges, and people who have been very successful in America. And these students may have lower scores than more deserving minorities with profiles more like my background, and I'm not going to go into my background because it's not really relevant in this discussion right now. Too many times I saw the best qualified minority not chosen because they did not have the right pedigree. You go to a lot of these elite institutions, and what you find is people that are very similar in backgrounds, and what's different about them is their races. And so the demise of affirmative action at these institutions and the focus on the individuals rather than their group-based membership will likely yield a much better student body, one that's more qualified, because then the admissions officers, if they really want diversity, they will have to look at each student, and it will benefit the poor white child from Appalachia whose parents never completed the 3rd grade, who excelled, who was able to accomplish extraordinary things, as well as racial and ethnic minorities who have worked hard, who have made the grade, who have overcome enormous things. I believe that there will be more opportunities. I also don't agree with those who say that the institutions will be lily white. Long before race-based affirmative action and during the affirmative action movement, what we fought for was non-discrimination and equal opportunity. There were colleges and universities in the Northeast and in New England that never discriminated against blacks. Those colleges and universities had black students. Harvard University admitted its first black student in 1870. It graduated America's first black PhD, W.E.B. Du Bois, in the 1930s. And Harvard University does not have a record of having discriminated against blacks. There are many black alumni from Harvard that received their degrees before race-based affirmative action. I can also say that when it comes to affirmative action, that the black elites in Washington, D.C. that have had government jobs, many of them got their government jobs in the 1950s. Whenever the civil service test came about, they loved the civil service test because it took the discrimination out of the picture. The job went to the person who had the highest scores. And so what blacks did was study harder maybe than other people around them. They applied themselves, they excelled, and many blacks got into institutions and places where it had been lily white. They met the standards. The civil rights movement was positive, but it wasn't meant to give preferential treatment. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was to end the discrimination based on race, color, creed, national origin, sex, and religion. It wasn't passed to renew discrimination all over again and to pick new groups to discriminate against. What has happened with the Supreme Court decision, right now it affects higher education, but it also has implications for DEI, and it's something that I believe is positive for America. And I believe that blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, that people are incentivized to meet whatever standards you put before them. And those with the most talent, wherever they set their sights, wherever they want to go, people will apply themselves. They will get there. We shouldn't worry about the decision. We should celebrate the decision.